Good morning, everybody. It's always a real pleasure when I get the call from the bullpen that, hey, we need you, get the arm warmed up, bring a message and share it with us. And I think the theme this month is very interesting. You know, there's a lot of different themes that churches and pastors will lean into, and I think this one, as I dove into the text this week, I was like, man, this hits everybody. And that's really hard to find something that hits everybody. Like a lot of times you dig into a scripture and maybe it's for this group or that group, or it's maybe specific to something, you know, that kind of corners a certain group or demographic. But I feel like this is going to hit everybody. And so make sure you're ready for that. You know, the theme is taking on water. And the whole idea of that is that, man, water generally is something that's really good. You know, we're made up of mostly water. You know, we have to drink it to sustain life and to be just a normal human. But water has to be controlled. You know, we have dams, bridges, we have little waterways that are built because water can be very dangerous. And so even though we're made of water, we need water. Water's got to be kept in its proper place for us to be able to thrive as humans. So I want that to be at the front of your mind as we lean in today, because what we're going to lean in today is kind of unique to the human experience. And we're going to look at different things as I go through life. There's got to be certain things I develop and am aware of if I'm going to thrive in life, and especially as a believer or as a Christ follower. All right, so we're going to shine some light on those. And in preparing for today, I was thinking about a couple of different things in nature that maybe spoke to the message. And the one thing that really came to mind was the chameleon. And the chameleon is a very unique creature because it has the ability to adapt more than most. In fact, not only can it change colors and patterns depending on its species, but some chameleons, it's ingrained in them, they change color so that they're invisible to the prey that seeks them. And so this chameleon, in its environment, which can be lethal and have predators all around, it has the ability to adapt. And so what I'd like to have in the forefront of your mind is that as a human being in the culture we live in the world we live in, we can learn a lot from the chameleon. And the fact that we have to be able to sometimes adapt to certain situations. You know, as a college coach, I coached men's basketball for like 8 years. And then at a certain point, I started coaching women's basketball. There were some chameleon things that had to happen for me to become a good women's coach compared to a men's coach. I had to be able to adapt. The things I maybe did with 22-year-old guys to coach them and motivate them, I had to maybe tweak my message a little bit to reach college women's basketball players. And so as I walked into a new environment, I had to kind of see the lay of the land, and I had to adapt accordingly. And sometimes as a Christ follower in this world, or shoot, you might get a new job, or you might move to a new city, or you might get a new boss or a new teacher, and you might be forced to adapt on the fly. Not only do we have to be able to adapt, kind of like the chameleon in certain situations, but we also got to be able to keep the culture and the water at bay. So it's really twofold, right? And that's what I want you to have at the forefront of your mind. As a Christ follower, as a human in this world, I need to be able to adapt when needed, but also, you know, a couple weeks ago, we had this submersible story. And this Ocean Gate Titan went down into the depths. And what happened? That carbon fiber connection, it got a little too deep. And that pressure built. And before you know it, that water was seeping in there. And that crushed that submersible. So we are in a unique situation as human beings, as Christ followers, where we're in a world that we have to be able to adapt. But I also got to be able to have this ability to be in the culture and protect and keep the water out. That's a unique juggling act for a Christ follower, a human being, or you in any situation where you might have to be facing something new and different. And so for today, we're going to be looking at the life of Daniel, especially early on. And before we get into the life of Daniel, I want to kind of have a foreshadowing and backstory. And that's in Jeremiah, where we kind of see this purpose and mission coming about because we have this warrior king, Nebuchadnezzar, and he's dominating and overtaking the area, right? And it's going to get to the point where they're going to be in Jerusalem, and God's people are going to be in exile and deported out of their own land. Okay? And so that's kind of the stage for this. And in Jeremiah 29:7, we kind of have this foreshadowing that's taking place. And here's what it says. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for its welfare you will find in your welfare. Read that one more time. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. Now here's what I want you to picture. Here's Daniel, and most scholars think Daniel's about 15 years old. Anybody under 18 in here? Raise your hand if you're under 18. This is not 55-year-old Daniel that's been in church for 40 years. This is a 15-year-old kid, right? And so this is not, like, when I say this is for everybody, I mean this is for everybody. Think about this. This kid is a prophet, and they're being marched out of Jerusalem, out of his area where he grew up, and he's walking with his crew, right? And he's supposed to be a prophet. Imagine that environment. Like, Daniel, what's going on, dude? Daniel, you say you're a prophet, you serve this God, right? Well, why are we marching to Babylon? If your God is so about it and running things, then why are we leaving our hometown and going to this place we don't even belong? Imagine being Daniel. It'd been real easy to have a little bit of a loser's limp. Like, I don't know, God, what are you doing, man? You want me to lead all these people, right? Why are you making me take the biggest L ever? We're getting overthrown and taken over, and I'm going to a land where they don't even believe in you. So Daniel's not really showing up to the scene probably like the most confident. He's probably getting the side eye from a lot of his crew, like, who's this dude? We're following this dude. Look where we're going. We're going to Babylon. They worship false gods there. That's Daniel. He's 15. That's his environment. The waters are already closing in on him, right? And he's going to Babylon. He's probably thinking, man, I got to be able to adapt, and I got to be able to keep the water at bay. Two things that are a lot harder to do, probably easier to say than to do. Continuing on. Let's get into the actual text. Daniel 1:3-5. Then the king ordered his chief of staff to bring to the palace some of the young men of Judah's royal family. So fast forward, here's Daniel with some of his crew, right? And these guys stand out. So even though they've been captured and they're kind of hostages or slaves, something about them, Babylon sees value in them, and the king's like, hey, let's bring these people, even though we've taken them hostage, they bring a lot to the table. So let's bring them into our inner circle, and maybe we can develop them, and that we can use them to our benefit. So the chief of staff brings to the palace some of the young men of Judah's royal family and other noble families who had been brought to Babylon as captives. Verse 4, select only strong, healthy, and good-looking young men, he said. So basically, Pastor Scott and I would have been in a lot of trouble back then because they would have said, hey, those handsome, strong guys, or you have to come with us. Make sure they are well-versed in every branch of learning and gifted with knowledge and good judgment, and are suited to serve in the royal palace. Train these young men in the language and literature of Babylon. The king assigned them a daily ration of food and wine from his own kitchens. They were to be trained for 3 years, and they would enter the royal service. So get this. We have all these captives taken from Jerusalem, taken from Judah, and here they are in Babylon. And the leadership says, oh, you two, you three right here, you three, I see a lot of potential in you, so I'm going to take you out of the whole group, and you're coming with me, and I'm going to give you the best food, I'm going to give you the best education we have, and I'm going to develop you to be like our inner circle crew, and you're going to help us do what we got to do. So they're kind of handpicked. For some reason, they stand out. And so even though they're kind of in the enemy's camp, the enemy sees value in them and says, hey, we're going to develop you. And they so it's almost like a promotion, right? Sometimes it's really easy for the world to offer us its promotion. But that can often come with a cost. So Daniel's in a unique position here. Daniel's being elevated by the enemy, right? By the culture, by his captors. It's kind of putting him in a unique position. He's got to be able to adapt, like the chameleon, but he's got to make sure the water doesn't seep in. Continuing on, verse 6 and 7. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were 4 of the young men chosen, all from the tribe of Judah. The chief of staff renamed them with these Babylonian names. So my little crew I picked out right here. So I'm Daniel, I picked my 3 right here. It's okay, we're the ones that are in the mentorship program of Babylon, right? Well, one of the first things they do is say, we're going to give them new names. We're going to rename them. So Daniel is now called Belteshazzar. Hananiah is now called Shadrach. Mishael was now called Meshach. And Azariah was now called Abednego. And you might say, well, that's not that big of a deal, is it? It's just a new name. Maybe it's just a language gap. No, it's not. You got to understand. In that time period, when you were given a name, it had weight. It carried substance. It might be a part of your lineage. It might be something related to your call or mission in life. It might be connected to who you are in your very identity. So when Babylon all of a sudden is giving them a new name, it's really not just about the name, because that name has meaning. And so when I find myself in a new environment, that water pushes up against me, and I have some decisions to make. I have to be able to adapt in real time. You see, if I'm gonna survive Babylon, I have to know who I am. I have to know my identity. Let's break down these names. You see, Daniel, that name means God is my judge. But now he was called Belteshazzar, which means may the false goddess Bel protect the king. You see, Hananiah means the Lord is gracious. But now he was called Shadrach, which means inspiration of the sun. Mishael means godlike, but now he was called Meshach, which means like the false god, Aku. And Azariah means God is my helper, but he was now called Abednego, which means servant of Nebo. So the name is not just a name, right? It's really water pushing up against me where my environment and the culture is telling me who I am, right? And at the time, your identity in some ways was given to you, kind of like in a birthright. It was handed down to you, and it built up that person into knowing who they are. And so when I get given a new name by Babylon, it's really not just about the name. They're really trying to reestablish my identity and who I am. Continuing on. Verses 8 through 10. So how is he going to adapt to this new pressure? They've already been given new names. And now let's see what's happening in the day-to-day. But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. If you remember previously, they said, okay, you're in our inner circle. We're going to give you the best food and drink. Whatever that inner circle is eating, you're going to be eating good. And so we're going to be giving you the best. It's coming out of the kitchen hot and fresh and smelling good, and we're going to spoil you that way. You're getting treated right. So it creates the waters continuing to press in. But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. He asked the chief of staff for permission not to eat these unacceptable foods. Now God had given the chief of staff both respect and affection for Daniel. Look at verse 9. Isn't it interesting that the chief of staff kind of admires Daniel? Daniel could have been really dramatic and blown it up and said, you guys, I'm not doing this. You guys are ridiculous. I'm not cool with this. I'm out of here, and just been really dramatic and caused conflict. He didn't do that. He didn't. In fact, the Bible says that the chief of staff had respect and affection for Daniel. So Daniel, even though he's kind of in the Babylonian crew and being developed, they admire him. That says something about who Daniel is. The fact that he can be in another environment, another culture, he's adapted to the point that they see something different about him and they're drawn to it. So you can be in a bad environment or a tough situation, and you don't have to necessarily blow it up. You can still earn the respect and admiration and stay true to who God wants you to be. Verse 10, but he responded, I'm afraid of the Lord my king, who has ordered that you eat this food and wine. If you become pale and thin compared to the other young people your age, I'm afraid the king's going to cut my head off. And so they're like, okay, according to our belief system, there's certain food we won't eat. Food sacrificed to idols, unclean food. So like, not everything you bring down the path, we're going to eat. So like, even though Daniel's been cool with a lot of stuff, he gets to a point here where he's like drawing a line in the sand. And this whole idea of compromise, adapting to your situation and your environment without going over the line and compromising, is another way we can keep the water out in our lives. And so Daniel draws a clear line here saying, hey, appreciate all you're doing, Chief of Staff. You're taking good care of us. Appreciate the way you're treating us, but there's some things we just can't do. There's some things that you're asking us to do, and this food thing is one of them. And so I can't compromise on that. And we have one of the first times where Daniel's kind of drawing a line in the sand and saying, I can go this far, I'm okay with this, but I can't go there. In upward volleyball, we have a referee in the stand, and he's officiating the game, and you have a court with lines. And we have some really good officials who have to call shots in or out, right? And if it touches the line, it's in. But if it hits out of bounds and doesn't touch the line, it's out, and the referee's got to call it accordingly. Well, here, Daniel, in a sense, is being an official. And he's saying, hey, this other stuff, I can kind of adapt to it, and I can kind of be cool and respectful, but this thing right here, it's out of bounds. And so I can't go there with you. We can be cool and do things to a certain extent, but you're going somewhere I cannot go. I cannot compromise that. And there are times in life as a believer where living in the world, but we're not of the world, where you find yourself in different situations, either socially, at work, at school, where you got to go with the flow and just be cool. But I guarantee you there's going to be a time where you say, I can't go that far. I can't get in the car with you when you're drunk on Friday night. I can't go on a date with you if you're not a believer. I ain't putting that in my veins. There's going to come a time when you got to draw a boundary and say, I ain't going there. We can hang out and be cool, but I can't go there where you're going. It's so important to learn this skill because you know Babylon's going to come around you and say, it don't matter. It don't matter if you cross that line. Come on, we're having a good time. It's no big deal. But you know, if you get too deep, that water's going to cave in. And you got to learn the ability to adapt to your environment, but not let the water crush you. And you have to learn the ability to navigate that. And Daniel was 15, and he knew this. And yes, it's not always easy. But with God's help, you can navigate those pathways in your life. And if you do, he will bless you and he will honor it. Now, I know we got some young people here, and you're at a school, and there's all kinds of water and pressure pushing on you. Telling you what, give God a shot. And say, God, I know I'm in this unique environment, this unique culture. I'm willing to give you a shot and navigate adaptability without compromising. And I'll kind of walk that unique path and give you a shot. And if you do, I guarantee you he'll honor it. And you know what's going to happen? It took me in 9th grade, a friend committing suicide, for me to snap out of that. And I realized I'm not compromising anymore. I did that, and I wasn't who I needed to be when my friend needed me. And I said, you know what? I don't care what it takes. I will adapt, but I'm not going to compromise anymore. And God will always honor that. You know, we talk about testimony time. You know what young people need to see sometimes? Is a testimony of when you went through something and you felt the waters of life caving in, and maybe you failed and the waters took you under, or maybe you figured out, hey, I'm going to give God a shot, and sometimes your testimony is, hey, I gave God a shot, and when the pressures rose up and the waters tried to creep in, here's how he was faithful to me. Sometimes those stories are a little bit dirty or tough or painful, but God is always faithful. Amen. So we talked about identity. I need to know who I am, my name. God will be my judge, Daniel. Not some false God will take care of the king. Big difference. And now I need to know what I stand for. So once that food's offered, Daniel and the crew's like, nope, can't do it. And they kind of like this chief of staff, right? And he's like, whoa. Daniel, I thought we were tight. Like, if you don't eat this food, you're going to get skinny. They're going to cut my head off. Like, it's my job to keep some muscle on you and keep you guys looking right? And so if you stop eating all this fancy food, you're going to drop 20 pounds, and King's going to cut my head off because you're not eating, and you're his prized property. And so Daniel's like, I got to make a stand right here. You see, cooperation does not mean you have to compromise. Just as I cooperate, like I go to the high school every other Friday, we do like a huddle, right? And I interact with a lot of different staff and teachers. Not everybody I interact with is like 100% on board or like me. So I gotta be able to like cooperate, right? I gotta be able to be friendly with my attendance office people and my people that unlock the door for me. I gotta be able to have some rapport with them. I can't just come in and be like, oh, you know, these schools are just going to hell in a handbasket, right? Y'all teaching all this nonsense in here? You think that's a good strategy? No. I gotta cooperate. I gotta know my environment and adapt. And I have to build relationship. And once I do that, then maybe God will honor that. And so just because I cooperate doesn't mean I'm compromising. You get that? I show up to that school, and I'm willing to cooperate with whoever I need to do what I need to do. I'm not willing to compromise. Big difference. Chameleon, submersible. And then being present does not mean you have to participate. Look at the life of Jesus. Look at that friend of sinners. Look who he's hanging out with. Through the life of Jesus, I can see, hey, you can do this. You can adapt and not compromise. You can be present and not participate. You can navigate that way. One of the biggest impacts in my life was a young man named Alex Anderson. And Alex played football and wrestled, and he was really strong, and he was older than me. And he was a strong Christian. And when we got to youth group, the conversation was about peer pressure, and everybody had these really weak answers. Like, oh, you know, I just try to avoid those situations. I'm just not friends with those kind of people. I just try to, you know, play it safe, which avoidance isn't a bad strategy if that's what you need to do. But Alex wasn't wired that way. Alex was like, I'm not going to be that way. I know who I am. I know who he is. I know what I stand for. And so when they talk about peer pressure, everybody's having these weak answers like, well, you know, I just try to avoid the pressure and avoid those. Alex is like, I am peer pressure. When I show up, everything changes. They know what I'm about. They know who I am. They know what I stand for. And they care enough about me that they aren't going to even try to violate that. I want to be out there like Alex Anderson. I want to be in the culture like Alex Anderson, but not compromise. I want to be able to adapt, but not get crushed like the submersible going too deep. I want to be like Jesus, friend of everyone, but not having to participate. I can be present, but not participate. God help us to be those kind of people. And 3, we can always choose to be transformed by God instead of being conformed to Babylon. I don't want to be a pushover. I don't want to be a leaf in the wind. That every time a crew around me moves a certain way, I'm just like, okay, I'll do it too. I ain't going to be a slave like that. I know who I am. I know what I stand for. A good friend of mine, he was actually my baseball coach. And now he's a doctor of psychology at a university. He has a really cool class he teaches called group dynamics. Eric, come up here. So let's say it's class and I'm the professor. Here's how group dynamics class works. There's 2 ways. Way 1 is, hey, you're gonna be my mole, all right? And I'm gonna have you like just try to mess with people and see how many you can persuade to act bad in class. Okay, they don't even know this is happening, but once we start class, all I want you to do is cause mischief, like get up and do stuff, and let's see how many other people will follow you and mess up class, all right? So that's one thing they do. Here's the other thing. Eric, turn your back to the crowd. All right, class, here's the other thing they do in group dynamics. Eric doesn't know about this. We're gonna have an argument, and we're all going to agree on this stupid idea that no one would really believe in, and we're just going to do it to see how Eric reacts. Okay? Thank you, Eric. You can have a seat. Give Eric a round of applause. So what happens is then you have the actual class unfold, and Eric's sitting there having no clue what's going on, and then I start a conversation. And the conversation's something really stupid, and I get you all agree with a stupid idea. And we're just trying to see, how's Eric going to handle the peer pressure? Is Eric going to cave? Is Eric going to give in to all the pressure around him? And you guys all know it's an act, so it's kind of fun, right? But all we're trying to do is see if we can flip Eric to the stupid idea. Isn't that kind of like life? Doesn't God have us leave Jerusalem in exile? And we're going to Babylon, and we're in this culture of godless heathens. And he's like, hey, here's a new name. Hey, eat this food. Hey, do this. Be this way. Give up your identity. Don't know who you are. Don't know what you stand for. And if you're not careful, all you might be is a mole getting flipped by the culture around you. God help us. But if Eric knows who he is and knows what he stands for, you know what his response is going to be? He's not going to be pushed around. He's not going to be a leaf in the wind. He's going to be like, y'all are stupid. I ain't going along with that. I'm drawing a line right here, and y'all can have your crazy ideas or whatever you want to do. We can still be cool, but you're not flipping me. And that's really the goal. We're hoping to see how, and then you study that to see how the group works. But we're all in that situation. Everywhere you go, you're probably in some situation like that. But I can choose to be transformed by God instead of being conformed to Babylon. I don't want to be a conformist. I want to be transformed. And in doing that, I'm hoping he uses me to transform others. Right? Let's continue. Daniel 1:11 through 13. So Daniel spoke with the attendant who'd been appointed by the chief of staff to look after the crew. And Daniel says, hey, test us for 10 days on a diet of vegetables and water. At the end of 10 days, see how we look compared to the other young men who are eating the king's food, then make your decision. 14 and 16. The attendant agreed to Daniel's suggestion and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends looked healthier and better nourished than the young men who had been eating the food assigned by the king. So Daniel puts his money where his mouth is. He goes, hey, yo, I get it. You don't want to get your head cut off. We're cool. We care about each other. We're kind of on different pages, but we'll make it work. We're not going to eat that food. So do what you got to do with it. Bring us vegetables and water. We'll roll that way. And I guarantee you, after 10 days, just check us out, and we'll be more muscular and still able to do what we need to do, and you're not going to get your head cut off. And they go along with it, and God honors it. So Daniel, amidst the pressure, amidst being in Babylon, he adapts. He's respected and admired. But yet he says, I can't go there. I can't compromise on that. And now he even builds this relationship with his chief of staff. Imagine that level of trust. You're talking life and death. What a unique connection that is. Truett Cathy, talking about the pressure, the water closing in. Truett Cathy is the founder of Chick-fil-A. And what's interesting about Chick-fil-A in 2020, the data, KFC had twice as many locations as Chick-fil-A, but Chick-fil-A had 3 times the profit of KFC. You see, they made a decision, him and his brothers, if you know his story, they grew up working at 24-hour restaurants. And just the grind of that to get by. And so when they got to a position of, hey, we're going to build our own business and do things the way we want to do, and when we get it there, I don't care what the money says, I don't care what the culture says, we're going to let our people worship on Sunday. and we're going to shut down. We're not opening it up on Sunday. Pastor Scott sent me a meme this week. Chick-fil-A meme closed on Sunday. Pretty funny. But they drew a line in the sand. And they said, we're not going to let other people determine what we're going to do. In the culture, refused to compromise. So even though they had half the locations of KFC, I think it was 4,000 to 2,000, triple the profit. It can be done. When that pressure comes in, I don't care what it is. It might be, I just want to be liked. It could just be everybody else did it. It could just be, but I'm trying to get approval of the new boss. It could be, but it could be this or that. It could be, I'm in a new situation. What do you expect me to do? You're going to face pressure in life. And if you're around 15 years old like Daniel, you're going to face a lot more in the next couple of years than some of us older people like me. We've been through some of those storms. We still face that environment here and there. But we got to be ready. I got to know who I am. I got to know what I stand for. And finally, I have to stay connected to my purpose. I have to know who I am. I'm Daniel. Only God can judge me. I got to know what I stand for. I can't go that far. I can't eat all that food that you're trying to give me. I ain't cool with that. And I got to stay connected to my purpose. Why am I here? You go back to Jeremiah 29:7. He's like, hey, I'm sending you to a land as exile. And when you get there, your welfare is wrapped up in their welfare. And so sometimes I just got to come back to my purpose. What can God do through your life or in your current situation? You might be in a situation that you have to adapt or you have to keep the water out. How can God use you where you're at? He used a 15-year-old Daniel in his situation. 2, what unique impact can only you make? You know, our Upward crew on Saturdays, they're uniquely positioned every Saturday. Some as coaches, some as referees, some as greeters. And every day they're uniquely positioned at their spot. Maybe it's concessions, and you're just giving people drinks and food and stuff. But you are in position and you've been placed in a role, and when you do it in the right spirit and you're willing to adapt, God can do amazing things for you. You see, you're uniquely positioned. You're the right person at the right time in the right moment. And there are times, I firmly believe this. Once my friend committed suicide when I was in high school, the thing that got me, I felt like God was saying, Jamey, if you don't get right with me, there will be people I'm trying to reach that unless you get right with me, they will never be reached. Because you are uniquely positioned. Think about that. Imagine if God's pursuit of you is not just about you. Well, there's 5 or 6 other people he's trying to reach, and you're the conduit. And he's saying, let me move. Adapt with me. Roll with me. Know who you are. Draw the line when you got to have a limitation. But let me move through you no matter what your environment is. Think about that. What a calling. I don't care if you might not be called to be a missionary or be a pastor or be a Sunday school teacher or be a whatever. But if this calling on your life is, hey, let me reign in your life. If no other purpose than to reach these other 5 or 6 people that you're going to come into contact with. Sign me up for that all day. I want that kind of purpose in my life. I don't want to just go to college for 4 years and pay off student loans and work 40 years and go to my deathbed after being in a retirement home and think I never let God really use me. I want to leave this world with a smile on my face, knowing, hey, I put it on the line for him. I was open and available to do whatever he wanted to do. And even if it's only reaching one person, sign me up for that. I'll take that all day. Because I got to stay connected to my purpose. And when you're connected to your purpose, you can be in Babylon. You can have water pressing it all around you. And you can have a smile on your face, saying he's been faithful every step of the way. Whether we're in Jerusalem or whether we're in exile as slaves and hostages, he is always faithful. 3, are you going to be a leaf in the wind and be influenced by the Babylonian influence around you, or will you be an influencer? We need more Alex Andersons. We need more people willing to say, hey, God used me to change my environment instead of the environment changing me. Lord, help me to adapt but not compromise so Babylon gets into me. Dan, we did this before, Dan. Last year we did this, Dan. All of us are one of these 3 things, right? We did this in Upward last year. You're either coffee beans, an egg, or a potato. Eric, come up here. Dan, come up here. So I'll be the potato today. I think Dan was a potato last time. You're going to be the egg. You're going to be coffee, all right? And just imagine this whole thing, just imagine I'm a small potato, right? He's a small egg. He's a couple of coffee beans. Maybe he's just a 1-pound bag of his favorite coffee. But imagine this whole area is just a huge, hot, boiling pot of water. And that's Babylon. That's whatever environment we find ourselves in that's not agreeable to maybe our faith walk, right? And so me as a little potato, I'm like, oh, look at this cool boiling water. I'm going to jump right in. Cannonball, boom. And I'm a nice, strong, firm potato. And I'm a tough guy. But after about 20 minutes in that boiling water, all of a sudden the world softened me up quick. And so if you're firm and you're tough, the world will soften you up quick. And then my boy Eric's, he's our egg. Maybe he's an Easter egg that got painted with a little smiley face or some kind of design. But we're gonna toss Eric in the boiling water with me, and I'm in there already. I'm a boiling potato. And now Eric goes in there, and Eric's got a soft yolk inside. And so Eric is really nice, and he's going along with whatever's around him. He's cool, and he's easy. People like him, and he's just going to play it safe. And when Eric gets tossed into that boiling water of Babylon, it hardens him. And we're going to harden that heart up. Oh, you love people? Oh, you're a nice guy? Eric, we're going to break your heart till you're firm and solid and calloused, and you got nothing soft left in you. So here's me, tough guy. Now I'm mashed potatoes. Now Eric's deviled eggs. World is just kicking our rear end because it's impacting us. I have no ability as a potato to go in there and change the situation. Eric, as an egg, he can't go in there and change the situation. We're just leaves in the wind. But here comes coffee. And Dan's like, you know what? I know who I am. I have a freshness seal. I smell amazing. And these 2 clowns over here, that potato, he got mashed. That egg's hard boiled and he's deviled eggs. Watch this. And coffee goes to Babylon. It says, you ready for this? And God just pours him out on that boiling water. Maybe it's a French press. And once that coffee gets in there, and that mixture happens, then aroma releases. And God says, you know what? You know who you are, you know what you stand for, you know your purpose. We're changing that into coffee. And now the entire culture is changed because coffee made itself available to the environment around it and said, you know what? It's not going to change me. I'm going to change it. God help us. Give these two guys a round of applause. Stand with me. We're going to be closing in a moment. But this is something, like I said, it hits everybody. And God's present today. His word is faithful. It doesn't return void. I guarantee you, you're in an environment or some kind of situation in your life where there's water pressing in, pressure's building up, and you're having to juggle adapting and compromising. Let me tell you, Jesus lived a life where he was present, but he didn't participate. He was without compromise. God can use you. And so here's my question for you today. Are you willing to be coffee in a Babylon world? Maybe you've tried the potato, you tried the egg, you tried being the nice guy and got bitter, you tried being the tough guy and got softened up, and the world's just been having its way with you. But there's a different way. Are you willing to be coffee? Are you willing to let God use you even if it's just to reach one person? I tell you what, that's a life you can smile at when you leave this world. I've tried being potatoes. I've tried being eggs. It don't compare to being coffee. Because when the Holy Spirit's in you and is working with you and you're partnered with God, any situation you walk into, God can use it. And he can keep the water out. And as you navigate the strange seas of this life, as the pressure builds and the pressure builds, he will keep you safe and sound. Here's what it says in 2 Corinthians. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Man, I just want to be coffee. Lord, use me to impact environments and atmospheres and wherever I find myself. I tell you what, if you offer that to him, he'll be faithful. The chief of staff learned that. I guarantee you that chief of staff, when he saw after 10 days these guys were still muscle bound and not wasting away, he thought, man, there's something here with this God they serve. Maybe all these false gods we serve are not what they're all up to be. And if you will live your life in a way where you know who you are and what you stand for, and connected to your purpose, people around you will start questioning, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe God can use me. Let's pray. Lord, I want to thank you for your word. I want to thank you for this series. Lord,